ABC News, World News Saturday. Here's Carol Simpson.
Good evening. Leaders of the 11 former Soviet republics that now make up the Commonwealth of Independent States met in Moscow today to discuss trade and other matters of mutual concern. But outside, Russia's vice president was stirring up the opposition to Boris Yeltsin and his free market policies and demanding that Yeltsin declare an economic state of emergency. Walter Rogers is in Moscow.
Russia's right wing rallied today in a bid to consolidate conservative opposition to Boris Yeltsin. There were black-shirted ultra-nationalists, would-be Cossacks, and neo-monarchists, even the Russian Orthodox Church. And there was Vice President Alexander Rutskoi, who has become the self-appointed leader of the opposition to Yeltsin. Rutskoi said the government's new pricing policies have waged economic genocide against the Russian people. He called for a declaration of emergency to prevent Russia's total collapse. And in a distinctly anti-Western tone, Rutskoi chided once proud Russians for now having to ask for humanitarian assistance from Europe and America.
If we are to accept aid, we should remember the French proverb, free cheese can be found only in the mousetrap.
The audience was most supportive when Rutskoi called for a return to czarist Russia's historic borders, which include some newly independent republics in the Baltic and Ukraine. Out on the streets, there is further evidence Russia is seldom patient with its reformers.
I was hoping Yeltsin would restore order. It hasn't happened. The Democrats are just like the communists.
It is not just price increases that make people unhappy here. Some Russians are suffering an identity crisis with a breakup of their country. They feel betrayed, and Yeltsin's opponents are trying to build a political constituency around this discontent. Walter Rogers, ABC News, Moscow.
Here in Washington, Justice Department officials announced tonight that they're hiring 300 more Border Patrol officers and 200 more immigration agents to work the Texas and California borders with Mexico. ABC's Gary Shepard explains why.
The decision to tighten border security was made only a week after waves of illegal aliens began swarming through the official checkpoint at San Ysidro, California, just south of San Diego. On some occasions, more than 100 people at a time would make it through, running into oncoming traffic without being stopped. Authorities say many of them were dropped off on the Mexican side by so-called coyotes, who make a living getting illegals into the United States.
Smuggling is a business. People do it for money. And if they feel that they can do it here and operate with impunity, then that's what they'll do.
Many officials admit the U.S.-Mexican border is out of control. In the San Diego sector alone, 1,500 a day are arrested, but another 3,000 elude border agents and make it into the United States. That's more than 1 million people a year. Some congressmen like the idea of a crackdown, but wonder about the timing.
Well, I think that this, very likely, is a response to the president's Republican primary problems in New Hampshire, where Patrick Buchanan is criticizing him for not being stronger on the question of immigration in the United States.
The new agents will also try to discourage illegals from looking for jobs by stepping up criminal investigations of employers who hire them. Gary Shepard, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Just 10 days from now, the voters of New Hampshire will go to the polls to cast their ballots in the campaign's first presidential primary. New poll results are being reported nearly every day, and a veritable army of reporters is in New Hampshire trying to figure out what voters there will do on the day that really counts. One of them, ABC's Jack Smith, says their mission is truly impossible.
Hi. In New Hampshire now, the candidates are running flat out.
Oh, Fergus, good to see you.
Let's see. You got one there? You got one more? What's your name?
Look at you all. Guys, thanks very much again. Thank you all.
What's your name? Bob Gallagher. Good to see you.
Good morning. How are you?
New Hampshire is vital. No one has been elected president without first winning here. But to do that, he has to run the gauntlet of New Hampshire voters. Like those you see at Manchester's Belmont Hall restaurant, where eggs are $1.99 and the morning coffee is still free.
I'm so sick and tired of hearing that.
A more contrary group of flinty Yankees is hard to find.
I take it you're all going to vote for the same man, right?
You're a registered Democrat. I'm changing Saturday.
the Republican so I can vote for Buchanan.
And there are kind words even for those running last in the polls.
I like Brown. Brown, they say he's flaky, but Brown's got a lot of good ideas.
Voters here are hard to pin down. Take this man who was asked whom he favored.
Tongass?
No. You did. You told me last night.
This is why New Hampshireites regularly confound the pollsters and the press.
They just don't want everybody to know who they're voting for. They say, this is my business. And if they call them and ask them something, they'll say, oh, I'll give them some other name. So that's why they always say the polls are never right.
Since primaries were first contested here 40 years ago, New Hampshire has succeeded in sinking the ambitions of several generations of American politicians. And voters here stand ready to do it all over again. Jack Smith, ABC News, New Hampshire.
In Manchester, New Hampshire tonight, former President Ronald Reagan is appearing by way of this videotape at a conservative Republican dinner to formally endorse President Bush. Reagan calls Mr. Bush the best hope for the future. The New Hampshire primary will be the topic tomorrow on This Week with David Brinkley, which will be broadcast from Bedford, New Hampshire. Among the guests will be 3 presidential candidates, Democrats Bob Kerrey and Paul Tsongas, and Republican Patrick Buchanan. Coming up, Mike Tyson's second day of testimony at his rape trial. And later in this broadcast, tough times for ex-Soviet athletes at the Winter Olympics. And where to find that special something for the bride and groom for less than